Putin won't accept that. Of course he won't accept that. But he will be able to say, he'll be able to go to his population and say, look, I started this special military operation because I wanted the Donbas and Crimea. Actually, we all know he wanted the whole of Ukraine, but this will be his line. I wanted the Crimea and the Donbas, and I got it, so it's a success. So Putin will say it's a success. We'll all know it was a failure, a humiliating failure. I'm going to be very, very interested to see whether David Lammy and John Healey follow in the footsteps of Ben Wallace, who played a bit of a blinder actually on Ukraine, in that he was quite forward-leaning, and I think his risk-taking in providing munitions to Ukraine at a time when the United States was quite hesitant actually helped influence the United States in the right direction. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether Lammy and Healey and, of course, Keir Starmer adopt the same line. I think it's extremely important they do, in view of the fact that Macron and Scholz now are, going to be less dependable on this issue. And another reason why this is important, Northern Europe really looks to UK for a lead on this. I mean, the three Baltic states, Poland, really look to UK lead because, a lot of the southern European states, Austria, Italy, are less convinced that supporting Ukraine is necessarily the right policy direction. So, we're really entering an incredibly important part of this whole war now. So, while so much of the focus is on, particular types of missiles and Kursk incursion and stuff, I think my own feeling now is we should all start to think now of preparation for the diplomatic endgame.
It's a really interesting point you raised, Tim, about the way Europe often seems to veer between complacency and panic when it comes to Ukraine. And you're right to mention the rise of the AfD and the National Rally. And even to a lesser extent in the UK, some of the things Nigel Farage of Reform UK said in the lead up to the British general election shows that there is some Ukraine skeptic sentiment out there. But I often think that a lot of these Western leaders look at it from the wrong perspective and they see, it is inevitable. The longer any war goes on, the more there'll be public dissatisfaction with it. Surely if, for example, Olaf Scholz had provided Taurus missiles to Ukraine several months ago, that would be helping Ukraine to be in a stronger position, and that would actually change the public perception of the winnability of this war.
I think that's exactly the point. And I think that was the view that Ben Wallace took. And to Britain's credit, actually, we've been probably the least sceptical, one of the least sceptical countries on this whole thing, and been probably the firmest in our support of Ukraine. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the tanks took forever to come in 2023. The F-16s took forever to come in 2024. Obviously, there are serious issues to do with training of pilots, provision of things. But, there was also, we have to all admit, a degree of foot dragging. And it's taken a long time to get each of these big issues, whether it was tanks or fighter jets, over the line. And of course, Biden has been one of the people who's been probably more cautious. Now, let's be fair to Biden and let's be fair to the United States. They are the world superpower. And they are the ones, who are essentially entrusted with ensuring that this war doesn't get out of control and go nuclear, for example. And I think I'm right in saying I think he's done well from that point of view. I mean, I don't know quite what the discussions with China have been, but it seems that China has been a restraining force on Putin. Because if you remember, Putin regularly used to threaten use of a nuclear weapon. And that hasn't happened now for several months. It'll be very interesting to see when the announcement is made, if it is made over Storm Shadow and Scalp, and I think it will be Scalp as well, probably on Friday, what Putin's reaction will be. Because in many ways, he's only got himself to blame. I mean, it's really convenient that we can link this policy change to the Iranian provision of ballistic missiles. Because really, he cannot complain. If you're accepting 200 ballistic missiles from Iran, you cannot complain if the West changes its policy. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see whether he uses the nuclear word again. My sense is he probably won't. I think in a sense he's being restrained. So look, I understand Biden's caution. Don't get me wrong, but I think I think in many ways it's been excessive, and it's been very interesting how as each red line has been crossed, nothing has happened. Now we've got to be really careful with this. That doesn't mean that every red line is crossed, nothing will happen. So that's a thought that we need to bear in mind.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people have speculated that one of the objectives of the Kursk incursion was for Ukraine to show its Western allies, look, we can physically invade Russian territory and still he won't reach for the nuclear button. So maybe those fears are overstated. Just on the peace talks, Tim, do you think they still happen if Harris wins in November?
Yes, I do actually. Much slower pace. I don't think she'll be picking up the phone to Putin. But let's face it. At some stage, this war's got to come to an end, and let's face another reality, which is that in meat grinder warfare, like the warfare that's going on in the Donbas, Ukraine cannot go toe to toe with Russia on this. It just do not have enough troops and enough equipment. People are claiming that Russia's losing 1,100 soldiers a day. I don't know. Figures, statistics in war are nearly always exaggerated. But even if it's only half of that, if it was 500 a day, it's a vast number, an absolute vast number. Now, Ukraine being on the defensive, not on the attack, will be losing far fewer than that. But they can't afford to lose too many. And we've got this problem in Ukraine where so many of the soldiers in the front line are still the first generation soldiers into the fight. So they're the guys who joined up in February 2022 and are still there. And, reckon that they should have been relieved now by new recruits. And as we all know, Ukraine is finding it difficult to find new recruits. And that's quite a contentious domestic issue in Ukraine. So it's not just a question of ammunition, although that's really important, infantry ammunition, but particularly 155mm artillery ammunition. It's also a matter of the willingness to fight. And I think Ukraine has done brilliantly in 2024. It survived 2024. I think 2025 will be a hell of a challenge for Ukraine, and therefore I wouldn't be at all surprised if during 2025 we see serious negotiations begin.
What is your sense of what could be, in the end, whether it's later this year, whether it's next year, whether it's beyond, an acceptable settlement for Kyiv?
I think there's only actually one settlement, really, which is this, and this is not going to please probably most people, but I think Kyiv is going to lose Crimea and most of the Donbas, so it's going to lose 18% of its territory. That's a hell of a proportion for any country to lose. Having said that, the Donbas is completely trashed. Completely trashed. It's going to be a huge amount of money to rebuild the cities there, maybe Russia could spend that money rather than Ukraine. A lot of the people there, as you know, are Russian speaking anyway. A lot of the inhabitants have fled to Ukraine. So look, this is a really, really bitter pill to swallow. Don't get me wrong. I really don't like it. I don't even like saying it. But I don't think Ukraine is going to win back Donbas or Ukraine. Ukraine is going to win back Donbas or Crimea. So that's what Russia gets. The other thing is Russia is not going to sign up to reparations, and Russia's not going to sign up to war crimes trials. So Russia's going to get a lot. So what is the lot that we're going to give Ukraine for signing? And it seems to me it's got to be EU membership and NATO membership, and not this shilly-shallying we've done. Yes, okay, you can now get on the candidate pathway, which in 10 years might get you membership, which is where they are now. This is EU membership and NATO membership now. Now, Putin won't accept that. Of course he won't accept that. But he'll be able to go to his population and say, look, I started this special military operation because I wanted the Donbas and Crimea. Actually, we all know he wanted the whole of Ukraine, but this will be his line. I wanted the Crimea and the Donbas, and I got it, so it's a success. So Putin will say it's a success. We'll all know it was a failure, a humiliating failure, and Ukraine will get EU NATO membership. It must do. But it's not going to get EU or NATO membership unless some of the naysayers, the potential problematic countries, Turkey, Hungary, Slovakia, maybe others, maybe Austria, get knocked into line. And that's what people need to be thinking about right now. So look, don't get me wrong, this will be messy. But what we cannot afford to do is come to an agreement with Putin which lets him take 3 years off to rebuild his armed forces and then kick off again. Because if he does that, then the Baltics are in danger, Moldova, Georgia, all these places are in danger. We cannot allow that to happen. So the only way we can ensure it doesn't happen is by giving Ukraine NATO protection under Article 5. So all in if one of our members is attacked. Now, Biden has been reluctant to do it. I don't think he's wanted to do it. I somehow doubt that Trump will want to do it. But this is what, if there is a plan, as there should be, for European foreign ministers or even prime ministers to get on a plane to Washington, over December this year, January next year, and go and speak to Trump if he wins, that surely has got to be what the game plan is.
Tim Willasey-Wilsey, really appreciate your insight and analysis. Thank you so much for joining us today on Frontline.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Frontline. For early access to our videos, member-only Q&As and live streams, then sign up for a membership via the link in the description. And for the latest news and breaking stories, listen to Times Radio and follow us at thetimes.com.